Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. I'm Jason.
And I'm Stephen Ing.
Stephen Ing is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm the guy who asks him the questions. So how this works is I present a topic to Steve, which I planned ahead of time, but Steve has no idea about, and we talk about it for an hour or so. Today's topic is the way of the superior man. And the way of the superior man is the title of a book by David Deida, Deida. It was published by Sounds True in 1997, and it's described on the cover as a spiritual guide to mastering the challenges of women, work, and sexual desire. Steve is it's a really serious book here.
The Unholy Trinity.
And Steve has never read the book, but I just finished it, and I thought it was an intense, focused, and driven piece of work, which contained lots of valuable information. However, there are some subjects in the book that I found myself questioning, especially when compared against some of Steve's relationship technology.
So it's kind of like I'm going to be interviewing David Deida via you, because you're going to be sharing his better thoughts and maybe some of his questionable thoughts.
Yes, exactly. So I will be channeling David, and I will be questioning your stuff in a way, but not all of it. Sometimes it's just going to be kind of a fun conversation about kind of man stuff. So maybe more for the men.
Well, I hope it's going to be fun. I mean, we all hope that it's not going to be boring.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very lively. So before we kick off the conversation, if you have a question for Steve, visit stephening.com and fill out the contact form at the end of each episode. Steve will answer a listener question, so stay tuned for that. And if you enjoy the podcast and find the information helpful, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and leave a review if you have some time and feel called to do that. So how this will work is I will read some passages from the book, and I have them broken down into different topics, and we'll just kind of talk about it one at a time. Okay. So I thought there is a lot of overlap with your work and this guy's work. He frames it more in the spiritual sense, where you come at it more of the intellectual, sort of rational side of things. So, but also those interlap. It's just way of framing the information in different ways. So, so first thing is man's most valuable asset.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read what that is. A man's presence, his depth of awareness, is his most valuable asset. Like, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well,
idea.
First of all, since you're channeling, David, can you tell me what it means to you?
Well, that's what it means. A man's presence, his depth of awareness, is the most valuable asset. That's what I wrote in the book.
Wait a minute. He said his presence was his most valuable asset?
A man's presence. So any man, the most valuable asset of a man in the new world, he says this too. So is a man's presence and his depth of awareness.
Well, I mean, how can you argue with that? Because in the sense that it's so vague and uncertain that, it could mean pretty much anything you want. If for me, as a child of a single mother who grew up without any family support from my dad, his presence would have meant a lot. Mm-hmm. So if we mean the most valuable asset, I have to share it with others. Sure, I could see that as a kid growing up in that family. But if I'm walking into the room and looking around and behold, you people, I am here. My presence is among you. That feels a little pretentious and weird. And so I don't know that's why I was. Yeah,
I think it's the first version. I don't think it's the latter.
Okay.
It's like presence as like me being present here with you being present with like your wife, your friends, like you not being off in your mind.
It's not just being in the room, but truly present.
Truly being there.
Emotionally present, intellectually present. And I do tend to agree with that. And particularly in terms of being a Homo sapien, if you don't have self-awareness, you're really kind of missing the whole point, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's huge, because it's only with self-awareness that I can identify myself defeating patterns of behavior and then replace those patterns of behavior with something more adaptive, more really expressive of my deeper values like love and the cherishing of others.
Yeah. So it's like that awareness then leads to that presence, and not he's here, but cool. So that's kind of like how this is going to go. I just want to kind of
all right. So that was the easy one. Okay,
that was easy.
Let's crank it up.
Next one is Ways of Living is the title that I wrote. He says in the book, live completely, know your deepest purpose, give the gifts you were born to give, enjoy sex as a cosmic portal into love's wonders, serve your friends so they may grow, and through the inevitable cycles of breathtaking success and gut-wrenching despair, when you have mastered and outgrown the challenges of women, work, and sexual desire, be willing to forget you were ever born.
Well, I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. And I guess what I'm uncomfortable about is, having escaped some of the weighty over seriousness of religion itself. It sounds to me like, okay, so this is like his new religion for the rest of us. And it still feels a little pretentious and
a little
overdone.
It's a little much. But again, like breaking those down, like live completely. That's something we talk about.
Who wants to live incompletely?
Yeah. Knowing your deepest
purpose. I want both
purpose.
my lungs. It's just when we speak in these sort of generalities and platitudes, it's really hard to find any traction for disagreement. It's just, at the end of reading the statement, I'd find myself, and why would I need to say that out loud? And really, would that even be helpful? In terms of, there's a big part of my life is spent not looking so much for truth, but looking for helpful information, helpful truth. And my style, as a human being is a little more down to earth, I think, in comparison. His sounds very astral. And
is from the stars,
Yeah. I mean, it's hot stuff. And I feel very modest in comparison. But I think in terms of one phrase that stuck out to me was something about his purpose, knowing your purpose.
Know your deepest purpose.
Yeah. I think for me, that is a really big idea. And the one takeaway that works for me from everything he had to say, because I think figuring out my purpose as opposed to our purpose as a species or our purpose as a culture, I think figuring out why am I here on this planet? What am I to do? That's an important step in a man's life. One guy put it, there are two important days in a man's life: the day he's born and the day he figures out why. And I think for me, maybe I'm like mentally a little slower than I thought, but that didn't occur to me. My purpose didn't occur to me until my 50s. So
your 50s?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Even while you were doing therapy, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, or what we'll keep going with the story now.
Well, I was helping people right along doing therapy, and that felt very purposeful and it was very meaningful to me. It's not like I didn't have any meaning in my life, but my specific purpose as a human being and the books I was meant to write, the things I'm meant to talk about, or the things I'm meant to at least attempt to achieve, those things, including speaking on this podcast, only occurred to me in my 50s. So,
and that eclipsed everything else you were doing in a way.
Well, I would say added to it. I mean, there are levels of meaning, right? And there are levels of intimacy. So this is my most intimate level of purpose, and it applies specifically to me. And I just want to encourage people out there who are listening to this podcast and this discussion of, men and their purpose or people and their purpose, that just because you don't know your purpose now doesn't mean you're living a purposelessness existence. And it doesn't mean you won't find your purpose eventually. So, hang in there, everybody. Hang in there.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like I'm finally coming to mine, and I'm 40. So it took some time.
Yeah.
And I feel sometimes that's better because it's kind of like the quarterback in high school, and then they live their glory days,
and then everything
year
else
is downhill.
Right? I've talked to people like that who feel like high school was the supreme achievement of their life. But would you feel comfortable sharing what you found to be your purpose?
I think it's in like teaching and stuff like that, and creating curriculums that allow for people to kind of work with some of this more like healing stuff. So it's kind of more in like the healing realm, and the more of the realm of distributing information, kind of like with this podcast. I like stuff that is simple and digestible, and that could actually help people live better lives. So kind of, I think I struggled so much in my own life that I'm now getting out of that and seeing like ways to help people and use the skills that I have as like a teacher, writer, creative person to kind of amplify that out.
Yeah, I would say I share that purpose with you. And for me, it is specifically about, human loving relationships and sexuality, because what should be, at least in my observation, the best part of our human experience is so often fraught with misery and pain.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's my focus.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, in the next decade or two, how you'll find your purpose maybe sharpening and refining and becoming even more focused than it already is. It's plenty focused, right? But I don't know if that process stops once you're on that road to finding your purpose. I wonder, if it goes right up to the last moments of our life.
Yeah. Right at the end, you're like, I got it. And then
yeah. Okay, there's so many funny stories you could tell about that. The guy with the ultimate truth, and then he just, what it is, okay. So what else has he got?
He's got, so what is a superior man? That's the definition. That's what we're going to go to now. So I'll tell you what it is.
Oh, I want to know.
This man is unabashedly masculine. He is purposeful, confident, and directed, living his chosen way of life with deep integrity and humor. And he is sensitive, spontaneous, and spiritually alive, with a heart commitment to discovering and living his deepest truth.
Well,
what do you think? Is that a superior man or not?
And, the whole phraseology is kind of crazy, because superior in what way? Superior to every other guy? To the poor schlubs who don't have all that figured out, just superior to the guy he was a month before. For me,
I know, it kind of gives you a little complex when you read this. You're like, I'm
right? I just, there's a cringe factor going off for me in all of this, because it feels a bit too self-flattering and self-congratulatory. I do agree, though, in the big picture, I think all of those values are important, but I think for me, they're more things that I strive for rather than, and I have arrived.
I am now superior.
Right. So, I don't know that it seems like an infinite journey to me. And I get very uncomfortable and start cringing when I'm around guys who talk like this about how it just sounds like they're talking about how great they are.
Yeah.
And if I spoke like that about myself, I think I would pass out from the just that shame and humiliation of telling everybody just how freaking wonderful I am. So yeah, it's not for me. And
but some of the stuff, like sensitive, you're a sensitive guy.
Yeah.
You are spiritually alive guy.
And I'm comfortable saying that I'm emotionally sensitive, and I'm comfortable saying, but I would add, and we all are. And I would also say, and we are all spiritual beings. And so for me, I guess the emphasis for me is on our common humanity and the truths that are true about all of us, and to be able to communicate back and forth with each other about those truths, calling each other up to a higher plane of existence, rather than just the way his words are read out of context. And I know there's no way we could read the whole book right now, but during our podcast, but it just, it gets to a level of grandiosity that is a bit much.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So,
great.
how dare you criticize my work, from Stephen. But also he mentions in there humor, which I thought was deep integrity and humor, which I think is really important. But no offense to David, but there's not much humor in the book. Like there's not much like humor. I mean, because it's like a lot of that sort of just straight talk, like poetic sort of stuff.
Well, not that I don't agree with him on so much of it, but sometimes context and style really take a front and center place over even the content itself. Mm-hmm. And I agree with him, that the humor is important. And you and I are always yucking it up. I don't know if we're funny to other people, but I see the humor and I'm watching you like smile and laugh. And so it cracks me up. And, but I think if I were, there are a lot of books I could read aloud, and I think people would be interested the way, Dickens had the audience in the palm of his hand when he was reading his books to groups of people. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to stuff like that, it's cringe time for everybody, I think. It's like, yeah.
Okay, I got a good one for you coming up.
Finally.
This one I really questioned to an extent. If you have a masculine sexual essence, then you would probably admit, if you were being brutally honest, that your intimate relationship is just not as important to you as the mission in your life, but you still want a full and energetic, intimate relationship, perhaps quite badly. How do you deal with this often misunderstood dilemma?
No, I kind of would agree with that.
Yeah.
If I understood him correctly, he's saying that having an absolutely amazing, wonderful partner and a great sex life within that relationship, it doesn't really, in terms of prioritization, mm-hmm. it isn't more important than my mission.
Okay.
But in my case, communicating what I've learned in intimate sexual relations with my wife, that is part of that is like the living out of the substance of what I'm sharing with people. Because I do want people to enjoy what the same kind of life I'm enjoying. Mm-hmm. I want people to feel safe in their homes, in a relationship based on equality that's abuse-free, to be able to have a sexual connection that's meaningful to them. But I'm kind of living the dream, Yeah. So for me, it's a little awkward, I suppose, but what if, if my dream was to be like a Dr. Jonas Salk, and I want to ease suffering of humanity by bringing a vaccine that will save millions from mm-hmm. untold suffering. If that's his mission, or the mission of any virologist or epidemiologist who's really working to save vast swaths of humanity from misery and suffering and death, I think, having sex with my wife would.
Come on, you got some people to save. What are you doing?
Yeah,
what are you doing, Jim? Come on, get back to work,
honey. I don't have time for all this. Come on, I got to get back to the lab. Yeah. And so I guess there would be a little bit of a conflict there.
And I get it to an extent, but then I also add in some humor to that, and then it's like, it's a bit, this is all kind of a little joke in a way that we're playing, and we're playing little parts, and I don't know, like how important. I don't know. That's, if I apply my comedy brain to things.
And then on a dark side, I think it sounds like a neo-Victorian minimization of the importance of taking care of me and my sexuality. Mm. So how important is it that I be happy? How important is it in your life that you be happy? Well, after all, the mission must be completed, so, but I would say,
well, I've done it too, where you focus too much on the mission, then you're like,
your sex life goes to hell.
It goes to hell, and your life goes to hell, and everything kind of.
Everything. Yeah. I think that's the conclusion. If your family life falls apart and your sex life is a part of your family life, mm-hmm. I don't see how that can help. And so it's almost like and I see this a lot with people playing spiritual anatomy or spiritual vivisection. Well, this is more important than that. And you see it a lot in religion where, set your mind on things above, not things below. Mm-hmm. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. It's like really the pleasures of the flesh, like sex and eating and sleeping, are those really like bad? Is there something wrong with those? No, I think actually that's a vital part of self-care.
Yeah.
And so if you plan on creating a vaccine to prevent polio, then I think it's really okay for you to have a great sex life and to be eating delicious food and to get a good night's sleep. I don't think it takes away from that mission. In fact, I think it adds to it. So for me, his remarks stir up a more holistic bent in me that wants to say, no, you get to be fully human no matter what your mission is.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like I agree with it as well, but then there's it's just in my head. That's why I marked it. So.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say anything that's really helpful without being somewhat exaggerating, given to hyperbole, because then it sticks in people's heads. But the moment you do that, you have to bring up the wiseacre who's sitting in the back saying, yeah, but what about, and I'm usually that guy, the devil's advocate who says, yeah, but aren't you forgetting something? And sure enough, in all religions, there is this other thing that we're forgetting, that the actual embrace of any form of spirituality is supposed to make my life better. Mm-hmm. It's not just supposed to be truth, truth, truth. I'm actually supposed to be living a richer, fuller life. And he's offering a lot of truth with a capital T, but it's still got to be woven into my humanity.
Yeah.
And that's the part that feels like he's kind of maybe dropping the ball. And I wish he could be funnier about it, like you said, because if he's not cracking you up, you have a great sense of humor. And do we have to be serious as a heart attack when we're talking about deep truths? I don't think so.
I spent a lot of times in psychedelic realms too, and it's a lot of jokes going on up there. It's just like, I mean, I don't know if you don't have to answer that, but there's a lot.
We're going to be talking about Jason's drug experiences in the months to come.
There's a lot of comedy going on up there. Let me move on to this one. A man's highest purpose is his priority, not his intimacy. Your woman knows this. Deep inside, she really wants it to be this way. In the scene above, he's just talking is about a guy having to go off to war. What do you think about that?
It's regretful that he expressed it that way, I think. We're talking about the scene in the book where he's talking about a man going off to war. Well, yeah, I go off to war to prevent her and me from getting killed and our property from getting taken and our children from being enslaved. And well, sure, that makes sense. But ultimately, it's to save the intimacy. So it's in service to the intimacy. I wouldn't say war is my highest purpose.
Well, he says it here. He says the woman, because he described the scene before that about the man going off to war. And he says the woman in the scene above would feel strange if her man said, I've changed my mind. You are more important to me than the freedom of mankind. You are the most important thing in my life. And I don't care if my service to humanity is needed elsewhere. So I'm staying here with you.
Yeah, that just is unfortunate that he phrased it that way, because if I felt inspired to go off to war, like this situation right now that we're all dealing with Russia invading Ukraine, I can't think of any Ukrainian man who wouldn't link his family's well-being with resisting the Russian invasion. I don't see how that's even conceivable. So, of course, it would be in service to the meaningful connection that he shares with his wife. And in terms of intimacy, for me, it means the ability to safely share my life with another. He cannot share his life safely with his wife or his girlfriend, his significant other, unless, it's safe to walk around the country. And when you're getting invaded by a foreign power, it's not safe. So I don't know if he thought all this through, and because if he'd had me in a conversation with him, he probably would have been annoyed because I'd be bringing up exceptions.
I'm channeling him, being like, man, just go with it.
Yeah, just shut up. And see the bigger truth, right? And that, I guess this is kind of a hard thing when I know that he doubtless meant well when he wrote the book and when he was trying to help people. Mm-hmm. And he discovered some things that really worked for him. And then in the process of codifying his thoughts and his experiences, he turned them into generalized rules that he believes would work for everyone, or that these eternal truths are universal. And they just aren't. Mm-hmm. There are situations where, if I'm living in the empire and the empire wants to invade yet another harmless country, just because we want to amass more property or more wealth, I probably would take a powder on that one, and I probably wouldn't go off to war in that particular scenario. Mm. So, that's the way he talks about it. It's as if there's no discussion to be had about the just versus the unjust war, mm-hmm. and about this family versus that family. I believe humans are pretty simple, but we're more complicated than he's letting on.
Yeah. Okay, let me go on to this next one. This is called Purpose Beyond Family, is what I labeled it. So, what is your deepest life purpose? For some men, their deepest life purpose is their family. If you are one of these men, then you probably aren't concerned about the issues of whether or not you are using your family as an excuse. Many men, however, regardless of how much they love their family, also feel a deeper calling. If they do not live true to this calling, then their core weakens, even if they genuinely love and desire to serve their family.
Yeah, I see that being especially false, in the world of religion, where you're called upon to serve the Lord. And yes, you want to do right by your family, but you have to go off to the mission field and you teach your children that they are subservient to the importance of, say, spreading the word of whatever religion it is that you are trying to propagate. And I think the violence that does, or the harm it does to a child's heart and mind to grow up in a situation like that, is incalculable. And so, no, I really don't think our religion, or spreading a religion, or many of our other very high ideas about business or war or any of the other activities we engage in are more important than family. Mm. I think basically, and it sounds less true, right? When you say, I'm going to serve humanity by ignoring systematically this part of humanity. Mm. And that part of humanity that I brought into the world and that I am responsible for, I'm somehow going to get a hall pass so I can go do this other adventure. Yeah. And that just feels wrong. I mean, if that's what you wanted to do, and if that was your higher purpose, do it before you have kids, or wait till your kids are grown up and then go do that. But if you have kids, I think you're supposed to be, about the business of raising your kids.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on. This one is a good one.
By the way, I want to say that is a painfully learned truth from personal experience, because I've made those decisions kind of according to his paradigm. And
in your first marriage?
Yeah, in my first marriage.
Okay.
And I think my children suffered as a result of that. And I think it was an expression of some psychopathology of my own that is rather unfortunate. And I could have done better. So if you can look back over your life and say you have no regrets, well, good for you. I have tons of regrets. There are lots of mistakes I made. And that if I could go back and redo them, I would do them differently.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know any honest man who wouldn't say the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like you want to be there for your kids. And even I grew up with absent fathers. My friend from Chicago, he when he was talking about kids, he's like, yeah, I'll just have a wife and I'll have kids and she'll just take care of them. I'll be off working. And that's what his dad did. His dad was a UPS driver. And his mission,
it's a higher calling,
was a mission to deliver packages. So then it's like, and he wasn't around, so he really didn't raise his sons. So it's like, when you think of it that way, it's like, is that?
Well, neither rain nor snow nor sleet nor dark of night, shall hinder the delivery of this UPS package. And I think, we really get let's face it, we live in a pretty materialistic society where getting the next boat or the other kind of toy ranks supreme in terms of, how important it is. And we tell ourselves, so my family can go boating at the lake.
Yeah.
But really our kids don't need more stuff. Our kids need us. And I think that's true of husbands and wives as well. We really need each other. And I think we could do with a lot less stuff and a lot less prestige and a lot less status, and just, be focused on what's at hand. And I say that, and that comes out of my own regrets. And I often would caution younger men who are on the precipice of committing the same mistakes I made. You probably don't want to do that because you'll have the same regrets I do. So, but if that's what you want to do, that's your journey, it's your right? Journey, yeah. And then you get to regret or celebrate your decisions, in the next couple of decades after that.
Yeah.
And your kids, there's plenty of therapists out there. So, your kids can go to therapy and I will be able to make a living. So it all works out.
As he adjusts his watch.
Yeah, my expensive watch.
All right.
This session is almost done.
This is a really good one because
well, you say that, but none of these have really been really good ones.
These have all been. This is exactly what I was looking for the discussion. It's just like,
I know, but I'm not feeling it. I'm like,
I'm feeling it. You're saying a lot of good stuff.
Oh, I am. Okay. Because his stuff is kind of.
I didn't bring this here to be like, I'm going to blow your mind with this stuff. This is exactly what I'm getting. Is what exactly I imagined it would be.
Oh, okay.
So this is exactly what I thought.
Well, so what's the really good stuff? What's the one you were going to? What's the one you were going to share?
I just wanted to talk about all these controversial ones that would question your technology and then have you kind of defend it. That's what I was doing it. And also it was stuff, most of the other stuff aligns with your stuff pretty well.
Oh, well, then he's good.
Believe it or not. Believe it or not, there are a lot of things that are in line, but these are the things that I marked that from working with you.
But I interrupted you and you were going to share something.
Yeah. So this next one. That's
super good.
Well, no, it's it made me question because I know your stuff, and it made me question whether or not this is accurate or whether or not this is good. To me, it sounds like a nightmare. And if I think of it that way, then I'm like a weak man, essentially. Like that's how he puts it. So, anyways, so this is about how women speak. So I know it's a topic close to you. When you listen to your women, listen to her as you would the ocean or the wind and the leaves. The sounds you hear from her are sounds of the motion of her feeling energy. Of course, there are times when she speaks in the masculine style of meaning exactly what she says, but more often and almost always in emotional moments, what she says is the sound of her feelings. Her feminine speech is far more like poetry than like a clear-cut agenda for action. And then I'm just going to go on. And then it says, when you are surprised by your woman's actions and you say to her, but you said, you are forgetting that she has a feminine essence. You might ask her, do you want to go to movies? She might reply, not really. Then you hug her and spin her around and say, let's go to the movies. And she says, okay. The truth of the feminine is whatever she is really feeling. The truth of the feminine is whatever she is really feeling in this present moment. And then the basic rule is this: don't believe the literal content of what your woman says unless love is flowing deeply and fully in the moment when she says it.
Wow.
Go.
Yeah. It's intriguing, isn't it? We all can pick up a self-help book and find something, a gem or two in there. And of course, it reminds me of the old adage, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Mm-hmm. But some of these self-help books, for me, really they seem like really. I guess I'm resisting saying out loud what I'm thinking. This is just terrible, and this terrible advice and this flowery language doesn't make it right. And it's a little bit like some of the language in any of the sacred volumes around the world, different religions have, where it's just awful, awful stuff. And yet it's put as though it comes from the mouth of God, and that we should all respect it. And I think it's a healthy human being who questions that, and then, to borrow a phrase from Alcoholics Anonymous, can have the courage to speak up and say, yeah, that really doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. So if I were a woman and I said, nah, I don't want to go to the movies, for me, even though I don't have a feminine essence, I'm sure, he would say I have a masculine essence. If I say I really don't want to go to the craft fair, I mean I really don't want to go to the craft fair. And if she spun me around and said, well, what about sex later after the craft fair? I would still not be interested in going to the craft fair.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you get out of the craft fair by your stuff. And here, I think you're going to the craft fair.
Right. It just sounds like more entitlement. And I from his point of view, he gets to spin her around and say, let's go. Well, then let's go do this. And there's a scene in a movie with Paul Newman where he's talking to Sally Field, and she's a reporter and he's being investigated by her. And he asks her, well, when are you free? Do you want to go out to dinner? She says, I'm free any day, and she names a day. And then he says, okay, let's go out that day. Mm-hmm. And she says, okay. And it's kind of funny. And it's a little bit like she's head over heels smitten with this guy's handsomeness and all of that. And I get it that could be a fun moment in a movie, but over time, how well does that wear? And is it really sustainable? Mm-hmm. And I would hate to have some guy reading that book and saying, okay, I don't need to pay attention to what a woman says. I just need to kind of, give her a little gentle poke under the chin and say, come on, sweetheart, let's go do it. And she said no, like 3 different ways. And I'm insisting that she goes and does whatever it is I want her to go and do, whether it's have sex or go to a movie or get a divorce. And she's resisting, and I'm making light of it, not taking her seriously. And I think women are better than that. He makes them sound like airheads.
Well, it sounds like the masculine energy is the one who speaks clearly and directly.
Yes,
and then it's
rationally.
And rationally. And if a woman does that, she's out of her feminine energy. So it's like, and then we talked about how just say what you want to women, how much communication dysfunction that creates when people don't just say the thing, but it's like, it sounds like he's saying, then you're asking your woman to be a masculine energy if you want her to speak her real mind. Yes. Rather than this cryptic stuff. And that's why I was like, I've been in that relationship where the woman doesn't say what she wants and doesn't speak her mind. And it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's a complete and utter, if you're not on top of it, spinning her around and doing the things and playing this dance of masculine and feminine, it seems like it's a time bomb waiting to explode. And
right. Like, what would you like to do this year for our anniversary? And she says, I don't know. We should just do whatever you want. And he's thinking, okay, well then we'll go play pool. And he takes her to a pool hall and they play pool and get a hot dog, and he's having a great time. And she's mad on all the drive home. And he says, what's wrong? And well, you said whatever I want. And the typical response in a situation like that is, but you should have known, what I would have wanted.
Yeah.
And that again creates that feedback loop that is based on mind reading and generalizations. I have no idea what mood you're in or how you feel about this. And if we could talk about it, like 2 partners might talk about it, we could certainly come up with something that would be mutually satisfying.
Yeah.
Maybe we go to the pool hall and go out to dinner, or maybe we fly off to France for our 25th anniversary and we play pool in France, in Paris. I don't know what it would be, but it doesn't have to be, it sounds, I guess, to me, like in his world, the man is the captain of the ship.
Yeah.
And she's providing this feminine energy, a little bit like the galley slaves down below. And that's wonderful and everything. and occasionally she brings him something to eat. But he is really the one who knows what they should be doing. And I that's just such rubbish.
It seems like it goes against the equality.
It goes against everything rational and sane. And that's why, if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out right now, because people, and it's not just him and his book. It's like, the reason it's so frustrating to me is that it seems like every generation recreates these crazy myths over again, repackaged, because if we don't like Christianity, say, or fundamentalist Christianity, we put it in some other more palatable package. But it's the same fundamental notion of disrespecting human beings for their gender and not allowing yourself, that is, to really search for a true partner in life, and to not be satisfied with anything less than true partnership. Which, there's a time and a place where I could say, no, I really don't care what we have for dinner. Mm-hmm. Or I really don't care what movie we see. I just really want to hang out with you. That's fine. But when I do say I care, or when she says she cares about what we do, then I think it would be the ill-favored man who would disregard those remarks, because you're not really esteeming your partner as the human being she is. So that is not a sustainable model.
You're making me feel bad for writing this book. Let me give you this, because I got so much stuff here. Going off that, your woman probably tests you in this way all the time. Her ultimate desire is to feel your full consciousness, your trustable integrity, your unshakable love, and your confidence in your mission. Yet she will rarely ask you directly for these things. She will rather try to distract you from your truth, and then feel that she cannot, that you hold fast to your truth while you continue to love her. If you are a weak man, the feminine trait of wanting one thing and asking for another will piss you off. You will wonder, why don't you just tell me what you really want instead of saying one thing and meaning another, expecting me to figure it out? This is the view of a man who does not understand that women are an incarnation of the divine feminine, and the divine feminine settles for nothing less than the divine masculine.
Okay.
Da-da-da.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. So it just goes from insanity to insanity, and it's really just awful. And I hope my idea of hell would be going to a place where only this kind of literature were available, and I had to read it all the time. That would just make me crazy, that we just couldn't be truly partners and truly smart, intelligent human beings together, building a life worth living and worth sharing with one another. This pigeonholing her as representative of the divine feminine, and basically always self-contradictory, and always like fucking with my head by trying to play these games, by essentially what he described was her trying to sabotage me as I'm going about my purpose. Mm-hmm. And I would say, yeah, I don't think that's a partner for me.
Yeah.
That if a woman were doing that, I think it's a reflection on my failure to properly qualify my partner as suitable for a partnership, any more than I would be somehow blessed by sabotaging her mission in life. And that's another thing he kind of leaves out, doesn't he? That women don't seem to have missions.
Well, their mission is their man until the man leaves to go do the mission. You don't get this?
Yeah.
Or
what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
Well, I also think too, I'm like, what about conscious feminine masculine? It's like, have they never thought of, like, isn't it about being aware of, if we do have masculine and feminine energies, if you want to go down that route, it's like, in which I think we do. I mean, there's labels, but whatever you want to call it, traits or energies, whatever, but can't you be conscious of how you are? And if this is causing chaos in the relationship, why do you have to be floating? And I think these are the kind of things that create the relationships of it's great when it's great, it's shit when it's shit sort of thing.
Okay, here's the thing that drives me crazy about this kind of spirituality. I do believe we're all spiritual beings, but those preachers who claim to know the very thoughts of God, and they're going to tell us that God loves or hates X, Y, or Z. That makes me crazy because they don't know one thing more than any of the rest of us.
Yeah.
I don't care what book they might have read and how many times. And he's in the same boat, but claiming a spiritual revelation that has no foundation in objective truth. And there's no room for discussion here, because if she says, wait a minute, what about when I blah, 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 if she disagrees with him, obviously she's up to her old feminine tricks, and she's trying to,
she just be in that energy. Then you need to smother her with your masculine energy and press her up against the wall and push your body into her. And then that will like ease her up, and then she'll play more.
Yeah. So there's this whole theology created around the masculine and the feminine. And he is apparently the prophet who's going to help us all understand that. And it just makes me crazy because, people really are, including me, people are looking for answers that work. And just the time spent, the book looks like it would take a couple hours to read, and maybe even longer if you wanted to thoughtfully process it. And then if you're a person with a vacuum of spirituality, you really don't have any thoughts about this, it might seem really inspiring, and it might really, you might be tempted to kind of go down that road. And I understand that as part of a learning curve. There will always be false prophets among us. There will always be false prophets among us. So it's sort of like romances. What are the odds that any link with another person that's in a romantic sense is going to be successful in the long run? Well, the odds are slim to none. I know we've all heard stories to the contrary, but even if true, those stories represent the tiniest percent, not even 1% of successful relationships. So with him, he's one of those truth sayers, self-anointed, of course, who is going to tell us the truth. And even if you find it appealing, to just simply hold it loosely and to take it for checking and see if it works. And if it does, great. If it works for you, that would be great. Yeah. But I have a feeling that if you're partnering up with an intelligent partner, she's not going to be too happy to have her feelings, thoughts, and opinions dismissed as feminine energy in the massiveness of my male identity. Yeah. And really, that's one of the great creations in our species is the notion of family. Fish swim in schools and birds have flocks, but humans do this thing called family, and it's kind of the original corporate endeavor from our earliest times. And we're meant to function as a team, and that means everybody has a point of view, everybody has information to share, and we're all challenged by accepting one another's strengths and weaknesses for what they are. And just because, say, my child is only 12 doesn't mean he or she doesn't have amazing insights from time to time. So I need to really be open. And that's why humans invented that other great thing called language, which he is abusing to the nth degree. So, just being able to communicate simply to each other, to listen to each other, and then come up with ideas as a team with the old adage, two heads are better than one. And that, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. So that would be far more helpful to me, that approach. Yeah. Now, he has a facility with language, and I give him credit for that. If language could be flowery, he would be living in a hothouse environment. But is it really helpful? I think not. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let me move on to some more. And again, these are just a list of things that I knew it would be more.
You knew it would upset me.
Yes. But a lot of it, again, if you read the whole book, I think you would agree with a lot of stuff, to give him some
70%,
70, maybe 50 to 70%. Okay. I think you would be okay, yeah, these were the more things, again, from working with you, it's that put bells in my head when I read that.
Warning bells.
Yeah.
Going off. Yeah.
And being like, okay, I don't know about that. And so this is a good one. I know you like this topic, intimacy.
Yes.
So let's see what he has to say about intimacy.
I'm scared. Go ahead.
The whole point of intimacy is to serve each other in growth and love, hopefully in better ways than we can serve ourselves. Otherwise, why engage in intimacy if your growth and love are served more by living alone? Intimacy is about growing more than you could by yourself through the art of mutual gifting. One of the largest gifts you can give your woman is your capacity to open her heart when it is closed.
God, I was with him right up to the end, because I do think intimacy, the ability to safely share our lives with one another, is an amazing part of our spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
And it is intellectually fulfilling and emotionally fulfilling. It's fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to dislike about intimacy. But then, what was that line at the very end? What does he sneak in there?
Well, he says one of the largest gifts you could give your woman is your capacity to open her heart when it is closed.
Yeah, that wretched woman again.
Sure, she can get herself out of her dark mood, but your masculine thunderbolt of love can brighten her darkness in a way she can't do herself.
Well, yeah, women without men are just inherently defective. We all know that. Oh, God.
Just get the masculine thunderbolt. Oh,
yeah. And
change her.
I guess because of my own personal journey past my religious experiences, I think that's a kind way to put it. Having put religion in the rearview mirror, I'm not anxious to replace that with some new religion that has been created by this individual, which is what it feels like. And I regret that this book was ever published.
Okay. But what do you think about the thing about intimacy serves us in better ways than we could serve ourselves? Isn't that kind of going against, because isn't it about?
No, well, it's doing for me something I cannot do for myself. Like I know that I can have a great life as a singleton. I can, as I've said before, literature can be beautiful. Music is still just luscious and gorgeous in my life, and sunsets and all the other natural beauty of this world can be mine as a singleton. But there is something rather remarkable about partnering up with someone, whether I'm gay or straight, male or female. Pulling that off is an amazing experience, because it really does enlarge our minds. It humbles us at the same time. It teaches us more about what love is. And at the end of the day, if it's nothing more than simply a strategic alliance between two individuals who join together, merging their mutual gifts, well, how could it not enrich me in ways that I can't enrich myself?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm very bullish on marriage. By marriage by any name. I don't think marriage is limited to, legal marriages or with approved documentation at the county courthouse. I think marriage had a pre-existence, not in the spiritual realm, but it had a pre-existence in our society as human beings long before there were courts or even the invention of paper. So, yeah, partnership is grand, and for me, it's everything that he says, with the exception of when the shit hits the fan, it's that male thunderbolt that's just going to save her wretched soul. And that's how I took his words, because, I cringe at that kind of language, because for me, finding a partner is, and I love that word partner, although I grew up in an era where partner was initially first used by gay couples, right? And so when I started talking about my wife as my partner, there were people who thought I was talking about a male partner. But I think partner, to me, gets back to those more objective ideas that we all have in our society about business partnerships, or even two old prospectors looking for gold. They've thrown in together and they're partners now, and along with their mule Betsy, and they're trying to strike it rich, and that's their purpose and their goal, and I get it. But you wouldn't partner up with somebody who was, just really, what he's talking about is a defective human being. Somebody who's so emotional, she can't be self-aware and she can't self-correct, and you can't talk to her in a straightforward, rational way because the poor little thing just isn't capable of understanding it. And if that's what womankind was all about, I think I would have to be a single man.
Yeah.
I just don't see how that would possibly work. But, it's obviously clear, I hope, to everyone listening to this, that women are capable of everything as much as a man is in terms of grand schemes, great planning, great execution of those plans and schemes. So why would you partner up with anything less than that? I mean, essentially, it's like partnering up with a family pet, and that makes no sense at all.
Let me hit you with this one. Still on the topic of intimacy, one of the deepest feminine desires in intimacy, though not in business or simple friendship, that was in parentheses, is to be able to relax and surrender, knowing that her man is taking care of everything. Then she can simply enjoy without having to plan it all herself and tell her man what to do. She can be pure energy, pure motion, pure love without having to analyze all the options and then decide which ones are the best. She can enjoy her man taking responsibility for the direction so she can be what the feminine is, pure energy. This one I know you're gonna like.
I don't think I can take any more after this one. I mean, I'm going to sign off on this because, for me, there are those moments in a marriage where he feels supremely taken care of and he can just relax and enjoy, and that's fantastic. And there are moments where she can do the same because that's what humans do for one another. So if I'm out in the garden and my wife is sitting in a chair reading a book, drinking from a drink that has ice cubes in it, and perhaps even a little umbrella over it, she's feeling taken care of, and she trusts me to not screw up my own garden, and she's trusting that in the safety of the moment. But these are moments in our lives. This is not a lifestyle where I just go on and on. I trust my partner, my wife in this case, I trust my partner to have my back. I trust her to do what she said she would do and to be responsible. I trust her with so many different aspects of my life, but it's not a steady state sort of thing, right? Where that's all there is. And I think, and I hope, I do believe my wife trusts me in the same kind of way, and trust including, that I won't be betrayed or that I won't be the victim of some useless, needless escalation of a problem that we would call drama in my business. I don't need that, and she doesn't need that, and so we get to have a great life. But that doesn't mean there aren't many couples who fail in that. And that failure for me isn't because of the masculine or the feminine. It's just because they didn't get it right. They may have underlying mental health challenges. Perhaps there's some other problem that I can't even think of right now. But, like war, dropping a bomb on your family's home. There are all kinds of problems, but I don't think it has to do with the deeply masculine or the deeply feminine. And I say that as a guy who loves being a man.
Yeah.
I love my male friends, and we hang out all the time. And I don't, it's not like I reject the notion of feminine and masculine. I think there's a lot to explore there. That's very interesting. But to codify it into a religious truth, I think is really unnecessarily rigid and utterly unhelpful.
Okay.
So I hate this book, and I'm getting traumatized.
I know you're getting upset. Let me give you one more. And then
no! All right.
Okay.
Last one.
If you decide, however, that the purpose of your intimacy is the passionate transmission of love, the rejuvenative healing of sexual energy, and the cultivation of heart through your mutual commitment to spiritual awakening, then be careful. Don't force your woman to be your on-call accountant. Don't expect her to always help you with your financial problems like a career consultant. Don't emphasize the daily chores while disregarding the bodily transmission of love for days and days. Don't squash the fullness of her feminine energy into merely functional roles.
What can you do but sigh?
That could that could be it.
So, okay, reducing that all. So if we're going to have great sex, if we're going to have a truly intimate connection and safely share our lives together, she couldn't possibly use her master's degree in accounting to help run our family books. That would be just crazy talk. In fact, why are we even educating these women, sending them to college? And that just makes no sense whatsoever. Or is that just maybe for the women who never will have a man in their life? Okay, it's a backup plan. I see. It's insurance for when her marriage hits the skids and she gets divorced. But that's just so dumb. That's so crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. And so it feels, I would say it feels like neo-Victorian, but I think it goes back farther to a kind of a neo-fundamentalism that religion has always been guilty of, whether it was Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, or any of the other ones. They all have this tendency to become institutionalized and forget their purpose. Their purpose was to make life better for humans. So if they're not doing that, then you get to say, yeah, that really doesn't work for me. And then move on. And it doesn't mean you're not a spiritual person because you're not religious. It just means that form of spirituality isn't working for you. And we don't need to hate it the way I hate this guy's work right now. I didn't think I would be so impassioned when we got into this book. I was really open to hearing some really great stuff, but it's like so many unhelpful religious leaders that I have heard over the years who mouth platitudes and say what they believe to be the right thing or even the controversial thing. And it's really just simply unhelpful. And that's, I think, why, so often as more and more Americans peel away from religion, it's not that we become so much atheists and believing in the non-existence of God. It's just that religion and God himself are simply irrelevant over time. So I don't identify as an atheist. I personally identify as a non-believer. And if people want to interpret that as being atheist, fine, I don't care. But I don't believe in the tooth fairy. I don't believe in Santa Claus. I don't believe in the Easter Bunny. These are really all fun stories in their time and place, but they're not really terribly helpful in terms of ordering my relationship with my wife. And I think of religion being basically the same way. When it gets used to codify some truth that some person believes in so that I can be controlled in the name of righteousness. And it's just not helpful, is it, to any of us? I don't believe it is.
Great. So sorry about that, David. Steve was not a fan. But again, I said you guys had more in common than you probably think.
Well, that was published 25 years ago.
Yeah, and there's also a message and before it.
So he could be dead. So maybe he's not.
He's still alive. He's out there doing it.
All right.
He's wrote a bunch of books too.
He'll never listen to this podcast.
No, I was trying to. Maybe he will. It'd be nice to have him on here and have you two talk about it.
I would have to fire you if you did that. That would be horrible.
It would be people would love it.
Oh my God. He would. I think he'd be pretty upset with me, unless maybe he's moved on. He might have moved on in his own beliefs.
Yeah,
since he wrote this.
Well, they gave a preface to the 20th anniversary, saying that there's new styles and there's some other thing, or it was about a page and a half, but I don't know. I found it interesting and fun, and I enjoyed reading it and found some of the stuff helpful. But again, most of the stuff that I found helpful was the stuff I didn't talk about. These were the things that just kind of struck me coming up against your stuff. A lot of the other stuff kind of seemed in line with
Yeah, and I still quote from religious books. I still read the Tao. I still read the Bible. I still, and I've read a bunch of others. And I will quote from those books because there's some wonderful truths scattered, among them. But when taken as a body of law or a body of a template of this is how the world works, this is how relationships, it's just too much. It's too much to bear.
Yeah. Okay. So to wrap up, we have a listener question. If you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form.
Okay.
So this is kind of long. This is a response to episode 30, which was, can men and women be friends?
Okay.
Humans are complicated, and having a yes or no answer based on generalizations to such tricky questions isn't always right, in my opinion. We all beings are unique, and not all of us let our inherent animal desires dictate our day-to-day lives or interactions with fellow beings. Some male-female connections can take a form of pure friendship if the intentions are right and the boundaries are respected, and some can't if feelings and sex are involved. I have a lot of male friends, not because I didn't feel comfortable with women or I wanted attention or acknowledgement. I have male friends because I spend more than half of my awake life at work, and I am surrounded by mostly males. It's natural for me to have more male friends because of my profession. It was interesting when Steve said he falls in love easily. I was tempted to challenge him. Is it love or lust for him? When you fall in love easily for someone, it's always good to check where those feelings are originating from. Anyways, it was an interesting episode. Thanks for recording it.
But no question.
No. Kind of like,
unless it's that personal one. Is it love or lust?
Kind of just like a more response.
And I do think that for me, at least, it was love. I mean, I even starting as early as first grade, I remember having a crush on a girl. And can first graders fall in love? I think so. But is it lust? It never occurred to me that I wanted to get up in it or get busy or get her over to my place or anything like that. And those experiences for me, I think are shared by the vast majority of people. So, and then the other challenge, if that individual is listening, I guess, and that is a woman, right? Mm-hmm. I would say simply having friends at work, that phrase where she said she spends so much of her waking hours at work and consequently has a lot of male friends. Mm-hmm. Those are not friends for any of us. Even if you're a man, friends at work are friends at work, and they are more like what you would call buddies or pals or coworkers I'm really friendly with. But usually when the employment ends, the friendship ends. Mm-hmm. So if that person quits their job or is fired and takes another job somewhere else, that's usually the end of the association. And if it lingers and they're invited over to the occasional family barbecue or something like that, that's great. We continue to be pals and maybe even more than that. But when I talk about friendship, I am talking about something that's more in that inner tight circle. And that to me is very different from work friends. Work friends, because for me, it's not binary. It's on a continuum. And work friends have access to lots of privileges in my life. Like they have they can have my confidentiality. They can have my aid. They can have even like some money. If they forget and need some money, I'm glad to, help people out at work. But they're work buddies, not friends yet. Could they grow into friends? Sure. And I'm even open. And she may be amazed at my openness on this. I don't know, but I'll be open to the idea that maybe some men and women are friends out there. Mm. But I would say in general, the truth of what I was saying about human sexuality being such an important part of our being, that friendship isn't really, it isn't really capable of containing the animal passions. It is a platonic love. And if I notice that she's a woman, and that's what we all notice when anybody walks into a room, the first thing we all notice, as established by research, is the gender, not their height, not their weight, not their girth, not even their race. It's their gender. And immediately we're assessing risk and reward. Is there a danger? Is this a possible enemy? or is it an opportunity? And because of that, yeah, I can certainly behave. It's not like I'm going to start pawing at the female coworkers in my life. I can behave and be civil and polite and all of that. But I'm talking about something that I think most Americans feel uncomfortable acknowledging, and that's the undercurrent, the unspoken natural sexual attraction that males and females have. And we are, at the end of the day, mammals. And mammals, I would like to remind us, are animals. We are still animals. And even though we are highly developed and advanced and capable of incredible tricks, far beyond a circus animal, we're still animals, and we still have all those feelings. So the thought experiment I had when I was talking about friendship was really about, what if you were alone and marooned on an island? How long would it take for that friend from work and you to be sexually active? Well, if we're talking about two heterosexuals of the opposing gender, then I think it probably wouldn't take very long. And that, to me, is the thought experiment that reveals the absence of a platonic love. Mm. So I don't want to turn it into a big argument, but if you're going to manage your sexuality intelligently, I think the listener would be well advised to be thinking about friends falling into the same gender category, because once you get married, you are probably not going to go on a 7-day road trip with your buddy from work who's of the opposite gender. Yes. And have your spouse back home feel comfortable with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to me, it seems like a very elementary, simple thing. And yet people resist it. You know, more often than not, for me, it seems like women resist it because it appears to be the case that women don't understand the strength of the male sex drive. Mm. That, and I do think, based on just casual observation, it does seem to be the case that males not only initiate most steps in the mating process, but they are responsible in our culture for doing so. And because she's unaware of that, because he's behaving himself at work, or they are all behaving themselves under threat of sexual harassment, discipline, that she's thinking, oh yeah, he's just a friend. And she has no idea what lurks beneath the surface. And I don't mean to make it sound dark, because I love human sexuality and I think it's a beautiful thing, but I just don't want to ignore it or pretend it's not there. I think most of the men who like her at work and are friends with her at work would admit in a safer environment that, well, if they had the opportunity or the need, they would certainly go there. And that is that.
All right. That is that. Thank you for the question. And thank you, Steve. Thank you, David, for stepping in for allowing me to channel through your book.
Yeah, the masculine energy. Do you feel it coursing through your veins?
I'm about to shoot you with a thunderbolt that you have never
Zeus.
felt. Cool. So thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you all next week.
Next time.